Hello, I'm Senator Richard Blumenthal, and I'm proud to represent Connecticut in the United States Senate. 6 years have passed since 20 beautiful children and 6 wonderful educators were killed in a massacre that gripped the nation's attention at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. For all of us who lived through that tragedy, it remains as real, vivid, and grief-stricken now as it was then. In the day or so after that shooting, I was at one of the numerous calling hours I attended for the children who were killed, where I spoke with one of the moms of those children. And I said to her, when you're ready, we should talk about what can be done about gun violence in America. And she looked at me through her tears and she said, I'm ready now. I have never forgotten that moment. Like her, so many of the families of Sandy Hook were ready to turn their unspeakable loss, grief no parent should ever have to endure, into action. Shamefully, tragically, the United States Congress proved reprehensible, unready. Members of Congress, including some so quick to offer thoughts and prayers after the Sandy Hook shooting, were cowards when it came time to vote. When a measure to implement universal background checks finally came to the Senate floor, more than 50 votes were cast in its favor, but we still fell short of the 60 that were necessary due to overwhelming opposition among Republicans. And from the gallery, vividly came the shout from the parents of those children who had been murdered in their classrooms, "Shame on you." And it was well justified. Shame on the United States Senate for failing to act 6 years ago. Shame on the Congress for being complicit in the continuing massacres that have taken place since in Oak Creek, Blacksburg, Charleston, Chattanooga, Lafayette, Parkland, San Bernardino, Las Vegas, and others. Shame on the Congress for standing idly as 90 Americans are killed every single day in shootings that never make the national news, but change communities and families forever. My Democratic colleagues and I have come up with a proposal after proposal to try to stem the tide of gun violence. I would know, I've led many of them. One measure that the Senate could take action on right now, this very week, is the legislation I've introduced with my Connecticut colleague, Senator Chris Murphy, requiring background checks for private sales of all firearms. It's the measure that polls #1 among experts in curbing gun violence. Our colleagues in the House passed a bipartisan background check bill 115 days ago, but instead of calling for a vote, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has created a do-nothing Senate instead. Why? It's not because background checks are unpopular. Americans agree with the experts. Virtually all Americans, 97% in fact, support requiring background checks. Background checks are intended to make America safer by keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous people, and yet a quarter of all gun sales in the United States right now may occur without a background check. That's a flaw with truly deadly consequences. Senator McConnell will not bring up common sense legislation to require background checks because he marches in lockstep with the gun lobby. That is just unacceptable. We cannot allow the gun lobby to stymie a legislative fix that has near universal support among Americans, including most gun owners. Let's seize this opportunity to move forward on common sense gun safety measures that will address the American epidemic of gun violence, and let's follow it by closing the Charleston loophole, passing a federal red flag statute, ensuring that domestic abusers are no longer allowed to possess a firearm, and eliminating the sweetheart deal that protects gun manufacturers from any legal liability. We are at a turning point for our country, thanks to the incredible bravery of survivors, the families of victims and advocates. The tide is turning and the grip of the NRA is breaking. The gun lobby is crumbling from within and losing its traction in the field. We are creating a movement driven by the incredible survivors like the Sandy Hook families, young activists like the Parkland students, and grassroots groups across the country. 6 years ago, the Sandy Hook families shouted, "Shame on you," at a Congress that failed them. And shame on us indeed if we fail to act now. Thank you.